Yes guys, welcome to the Fantasy Football Fix Game Week 24 live stream. My name is FPL Nacho, and in this video we are going to be of course discussing everything to do with Game Week 24, and importantly those upcoming fixtures as well beyond Game Week 24, as I know that is going to dictate a lot of your guys' current transfer plans going forward. So guys, if you are tuning in, let me know in the chat who is in. I can already see Cheekster is in the chat. Good to see you there, buddy. And as always, if you are new around here, please do consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you enjoy the live stream, please do consider hitting that like button, as it just lets other people catch on to that we are live on this stream. Sorry guys, Friday evening. Takes me a minute to get things going. So as always goes with the setup, if you have any questions, please do drop them in the live chat and I'll answer them throughout the live stream. It's not going to be a case if you have to wait until the end of the live stream. I'll be answering them as we go through the live stream. So no time is a bad time to ask any questions. Might make that a rule around here. So just to cover off what we're going to be discussing in this live stream, I'm going to be obviously revealing my team going into Game Week 24. I'm pretty much locked in. We're then going to be discussing the upcoming fixtures. I think that's quite important there. Going to be looking at the minutes played by players in European football and going forward, because I think there could be some rotation that a lot of people aren't necessarily considering going forward. Then we're going to be looking at the top 1k team currently and how I do think it is going to transition over the coming game weeks. And then we'll be looking at captaincy, as I do think there is a potential argument to say that a captaincy outside of Erling Haaland isn't out of the realms of possibility this game week. So again, that will all tie in really nicely to what we're discussing about the minutes played for players over European fixtures and in upcoming game week. So Hashim in the chat, I hope you're doing well. I'm very well myself. Greg, I am in the house. Good to see you, buddy. And Greenback Soccer, hello. Hope you're doing well, mate. And already an early question from Mohammed El Radi, I believe it is, asking about a Bruno replacement. Now, what I would say first and foremost, Mohammed, in regards to a Bruno replacement is, do you need to make that transfer? They have a home fixture against Leicester, who, although have been in fantastic form recently, aren't necessarily completely defensively watertight. Man United, coming off the back of that Thursday fixture against Barcelona, are naturally going to have wearier legs than what Leicester are going to have, and I am expecting goals in that game. But for your team, I don't necessarily think a transfer of selling Bruno this week is better than you rolling your free transfer. We're going to come on to why a lot of managers should roll their free transfer this game week. Realistically, if you said to me, either sell Bruno this week or roll the free transfer and sell him when he has a blank, I think you need to sell him in Game Week 25. Play him in Game Week 24, as you know his minutes are pretty much secure each and every game week. And then you could have two free transfers in that blank game week where you may already own Luke Shaw and Rashford alongside Fernandes. I don't think we need to be worrying about him right now. And Greg's saying he's already gone early on Nonto to Felix. And I'm a huge fan of Felix. It might be because I'm a little bit biased because I'm a Chelsea fan, but I think we have all seen in the half game that he had against Fulham, the West Ham game, and of course the fixture against Dortmund, we're seeing a player that is clearly capable of scoring in this Premier League. And I would say him and Enzo Fernandez are levels above the rest of this Chelsea team right now. They're operating at a level where they're almost struggling to play in this Chelsea team, because I feel like the things that they're doing, other players aren't on their wavelength right now. Felix, I'm a huge fan of. The big thing about Chelsea and why it's so good is that because of Chelsea not having a blank or double game week in the future, it means that their players are having fixtures each and every game week. Now, for Game Week 27, as a perfect example, we're naturally going to get drawn into the likes of Brentford and Brighton assets, and rightly so because they double. Players like Felix, I think, are going to really fly under the radar, because although they don't blank at any point, because they don't double, naturally we're not going to be as appealed to bring him into our teams, because we're going to get always caught up by the shiny toy that has a double game week in that week. So I really do like Felix as a transfer into your team. And in particular for this game week, it feels like a really good entry point at home against Southampton. I would have said previously that Southampton, with a new manager, maybe Jesse March in charge, could have been a different prospect. However, they haven't appointed anybody. It sounds like contract talks have ended with Jesse March. And I don't think we're necessarily going to get a more rejuvenated Southampton team. We may get the first 20-25 minutes of a up for it Southampton, but I think Chelsea's quality is going to shine. And we discussed about rotation and we'll come on to it, but I feel like Chelsea's depth is strong enough to deal with the minutes played in the Champions League. So we will come on to that in a bit further. So before we get going, guys, if you have just jumped into the chat, please do consider hitting that like button. We always try and hit 50 likes. You guys always deliver for us each and every week. So if you can get us to 50 likes, that would be much appreciated. Right, without further ado, guys, let's dip into the first section, which is going to be a quick look at upcoming fixtures and why we should potentially be rolling our free transfer in this game week. Okay, guys, on the screen here, you can see the upcoming fixtures for the next 4 game weeks based on attack and defense. Now, you guys have probably had enough fixture talk over the last week or so with other content creators, so I don't want to be going too much into this right now, as I can imagine you are probably up to date with the upcoming fixtures. But just a reminder, game week 24 is a normal game week. We don't have anything there to worry about in regards to a blank or a double game week. Then in game week 25, we have a very unusual situation where we have a blank and a double. So the teams that are doubling, you can see it on your screens there, in 25 is going to be Arsenal, Everton, Wolves and Liverpool. But the teams that are blanking in game week 25 are going to be Man United, Newcastle, Brighton and Brentford. So those are the teams that are going to be blanking in game week 25. Game week 26, similar to 24, is a normal game week once again. And then in game week 27, we arrive at another double game week, which is going to be doubles for Liverpool, Southampton, Southampton, just remind me off the top of my head, Liverpool, Southampton, Wolves and Everton. Those are the teams that are going to be doubling in game week 27, I believe, off the top of my head. Let me just remind myself, guys. I should know this off the top of my head. I do apologise. Game week 27. Apologies. Doublers in game week 27 is going to include, I got that a little bit wrong there. So game week 27 is going to include Brighton, Brentford, Southampton and Crystal Palace. I do apologise for you on that one. And game week 25 is going to be a double for Arsenal, Liverpool, Everton and Wolves. There. We finally got there in regards to that. I do apologise for kind of messing that up there. So what does this any impact for? First and foremost, we know that the next 4 game weeks are locked in stone. So there aren't going to be any surprises chucked in our way in regards to any other teams being added in. It's worth noting there has been a train postponement for the same day that Brighton have their fixture, which in game week 27 is against Crystal Palace. Now, it's worth noting there hasn't been any cancellation of that game, but the reason why that game has now been put into game week 27 is previously the game got postponed because of a train delay. So just be cautious of that. We should get some information before that week, so you don't have to worry about it right now. But that is just something that could happen. But otherwise, the next 4 game weeks, we know what we are dealing with. After game week 27, we have game week 28, which is expected to be a massive blank game week. So lots of teams will be blanking. And then game week 29, we're anticipating to be the biggest double of the season so far. Now, we will understand the situation of game week 28 and game week 29 after game week 25, because we will have the cup fixtures. And the cup fixtures are going to dictate who blanks and who doubles in game weeks 28 and 29. So, first and foremost, if you can roll your free transfer this week, I do think it is a powerful move. You're going to have 2 free transfers to go into game week 25. And that means that you can start to bring in some of the assets that you don't have that double. Priority should be Liverpool. I think bringing in Mo Salah is a good move for the likes of Kevin De Bruyne or Bruno Fernandes. Remember, Fernandes blanks in 25. If you don't have that triple Arsenal, I will be looking to invest that this week away against Aston Villa, even though I do think that will be a tricky fixture. It is worth noting for Arsenal. Everton assets and Wolves assets, we can decide whether we want to go in on them early doors or not. But I think having one of those defensively could be an easy way for you to field 11 players in that game week 25. Now, a quick discussion on why I don't think you should free hit in game week 25. Of course, it is completely dependent on your team. You might be sat there with triple Man U, triple Newcastle, triple Brighton, triple Brentford. If that is the case, then yes, free hitting is the right move for you. But realistically, if you are going to be building a free hit team in game week 25, then you're going to be bringing in triple Arsenal, triple Everton, triple Wolves, triple Liverpool maybe. But realistically, do you want triple Everton? Do you want triple Wolves? And everybody's going to be steaming into Liverpool anyway, so that doesn't feel like a massive differential having those Liverpool assets in that game week. And then when we look at game week 25 for the single game weekers, you could go a little bit differential on a Leeds asset, a West Ham asset potentially. But Man City still are away against Bournemouth, so people are still going to have Haaland. You can't go without Haaland. And other fixtures that are in that week, for example, Spurs against Chelsea, might not necessarily want to sell Harry Kane. So I personally feel like free hitting in game week 25 isn't the best use of the chip, because I feel like the majority of the players that everybody wants to own are already going to be owned by those that aren't free hitting. So there isn't going to be a huge upside of using the chip then. I think holding the free hit for later on, maybe playing it in game weeks 28 or 29, will provide more value for your teams than in free hit game week 25. So guys, let me know your thoughts in regards to 25. I personally think that using the free hit isn't the best use of the chip. And if you can roll your free transfer in game week 24, I do think it is a good move, just because it gives you more flexibility in game week 25 to potentially bring in those Liverpool assets, because I don't think it's the best entry point right now with them away against Newcastle in game week 24. But again, it is completely team dependent on that one there. Now, Mohammed saying Bruno to Jack or to Sarabia. I'm not too sure who you mean there in regards to the two there. Greg saying 3 or 4 to roll through game week 25. Bruno, Rashford, Trippier or Matoma. So realistically, I think you bring through that game week 25 Rashford, Trippier and Matoma, and you sell Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes hasn't necessarily been delivering, and his underlying stats haven't been so good that you feel like you need to hold on to him as an FPL option. With Bruno Fernandes as well being the most expensive, it gives you more flexibility in your team to be going in different directions with your transfers. Now, the reason why I'd hold Rashford, because you've built up so much value in him and he's probably the best value player in the game right now. Trippier I would hold on to, because even though Newcastle haven't been the best recently, it is worth noting, Newcastle's fixture, yes, they are away against City in game week 26, but in game week 27, they have a really favourable fixture at home against Wolves, followed by Nottingham Forest away in game week 28. And again, you probably have a lot of value tied up in Trippier, so I don't think selling him is the best move. And of course, with Matoma, there is no situation where you should be selling Matoma. He has West Ham at home in game week 26, and then he has a double in 27, followed by 2 home games in 28 and 29. Matoma is a player that a lot of people are going to be buying, so you selling him just means that you'll be behind the curve as an already owner. So do not be selling Matoma out of the lot that you have. And a question here, I can't pronounce the name, sorry, on that one. Which 3 of the following 5 defenders do you think I should include in my starting 11? Kilman, Trippier, White, Tarkowski or Lewis? Lewis is an option definitely, but what about the others? Okay, so realistically looking at the fixtures coming up, we need to remind ourselves of the fixtures. So Everton this week are at home against Leeds, which I would argue is a decent fixture, but I do still favour Leeds from an attacking perspective. I don't think Everton are necessarily overnight an incredible defensive team. Kilman at home against Bournemouth would be my priority over playing at Tarkowski personally. So I'd probably have Kilman as my guarantee starter in that team if you can field it. You need to remember with White, he has got a tricky away fixture against Aston Villa, but Arsenal do have the best away defensive record of any team in the league. And Ben White is probably going to come back into that team after Tomiyasu having quite a shaky performance against Man City, it is worth noting. And I would imagine that the Arsenal defensive coverage is going to be quite big this game week. So if you don't have an Arsenal player covered for you, then realistically, you are probably going to be in a situation where it will affect you negatively with your rank. So I probably would start Kilman, I probably would start White, and the decision then is between Trippier or Tarkowski. I do think there is a potential that Lewis will start, but I just think the risk there is worthwhile you starting him. I think you have other good players available in your team. So realistically, I probably would say start Kilman, Trippier and White. But the only thing I would say about that is naturally Tarkowski has a better fixture than what Trippier does. But it feels very difficult to bench Trippier knowing that he is going to be hugely owned this game week. Just because managers have to play him because they don't have as much strength and depth as what your backline does. So to answer that, I probably would go for Kilman, Trippier and White. But I totally understand if you want to replace Tarkowski with any of those 3 players. And Greenback Soccer saying, Jack, maybe Grealish. Okay, yeah, so in regards to that question, Mohamed, Jack Grealish went off injured in that game against Arsenal. We don't know the severity of the injury, but because of that very reason, I don't think Grealish is a consideration in our teams. And Ice Cold Joe saying, Gomez or Brighton player going forward for double game week? No, Gomez isn't an option at all. Van Dijk was on the bench in game week 23. We're expecting his return, and I don't see a situation where necessarily Gomez is going to be a long-term option, and I couldn't guarantee his game time in the double game week 25. I would much prefer have a Brighton option, even though, and it is worth noting, they blank in game week 25. So I don't think you need to buy a Brighton player. It's someone that you can look for game week 26. Gomez, I just couldn't confidently tell you right now that he is going to start both of those fixtures, knowing that Van Dijk is waiting in the wings. We don't really know who his partner is going to be in that defence. I need to remind myself of the centre-back partnership against Everton for that team. So in that game, the centre-back partnership for Liverpool was Matip and Gomez. My natural assumption is that Gomez will come out of that team and we will see a revert back to the norm of having a Van Dijk-Matip combination at centre-back. So I don't think Gomez is an option. And Charlie saying Mahrez to Gakpo next week. Potentially an option, Charlie, but we need to remember that both Firmino and also Jota is back in this Liverpool squad. So I do think Gakpo's minutes are going to be at risk over the double game week. Because of that very reason, I couldn't necessarily recommend that transfer for you in your team. Right, talking about fixtures coming up and Champions League, let me show you a minutes played slide that we're going to discuss. Brilliantly mocked up by Finn. Big shout out to Finn for getting this one done very last minute. So let me show you this one, guys. And while we have this on the screen, of course, it is a coffee time because we always need the coffee on these streams. Okay, so what you can see here is a slide, based on the minutes played for players in Europe. So that is going to include Tottenham, Chelsea, and Man United. As we know, Spurs played against AC Milan on Tuesday, and you can see that on the screen there. You can see Kane played 100 minutes, or give or take 100 minutes, played away against Milan, and played last Tuesday. Now, Perisic comes under the same breath as well as Kane, because obviously he plays for Spurs. Reece James played midweek against Borussia Dortmund away on the Wednesday, same as Thiago Silva. Again, we're just covering off players that are popularly owned players at each team. And the same is said for Man United. However, they did play on a Thursday night. You can see there, Rashford played 95 minutes against Barcelona on Thursday night. So, why is this relevant? Well, I think it's relevant because if any of the players on the screen right now are either owned by you or a consideration for your transfer, then we need to discuss a little bit about what their potential minutes could be over the coming game week. So first and foremost, let's discuss Spurs. We can see there that they played on Tuesday away against AC Milan. However, it is very favourable for Spurs this week as they are on a Sunday afternoon kickoff against who have Spurs got. I do apologise. Spurs are playing against West Ham at home. Now, of course, as we know, with Spurs, they've actually got a really large break between the first leg and the second leg of the Champions League. You can see that it is 19 days between the two. So we don't really have to contend too much with rotation for Spurs. Yes, they did play midweek, but they had the longest gap of any team. I'm really surprised they actually have a Sunday game there in regards to their Premier League fixtures. So if you're a Kane owner, you probably knew this already, but rotation I don't think is going to be a problem for him. He played on Tuesday. He's going to have plenty of rest for the Sunday game. And then their next game isn't until the following Sunday at home against Chelsea. And again, as I mentioned, that second leg of the AC game is 19 days away as of Tuesday. So, we've still got 15 days until that one. So we don't have to worry about any of the European football over the coming game weeks for Kane. Perisic is probably a bit more of a question mark. However, because of the injury to Ryan Sessegnon, I don't think he is going to be a rotation risk because pretty simply, they don't have anybody that can play in that position right now. So Perisic, the only reason I can see him get rotated is because of potentially those legs. Being 34 years old might just catch up with him eventually over this period. But I think looking at Spurs' fixtures and the rest time, they should be pretty safe for minutes in your FPL teams. Now, coming on to Chelsea, this one is a little bit more different. Reece James coming off the back of a major injury, it is worth noting. He played 60 minutes against Fulham. He then played the 90 minutes against West Ham previously on Saturday. He then played Wednesday night away against Borussia Dortmund. And you can see that on the screen there. He played 95 minutes, so the full game. And his next game is 3 p.m. on the Saturday, where we know Chelsea are at home against Southampton. Now, in regards to Chelsea and their upcoming fixtures, similar to Spurs, as we discussed, they don't have to worry about the second leg of their Champions League game for 18 days after that first leg. So there's nothing to worry about in regards to cup competitions for Chelsea. They're out of the FA Cup, they're out of the Carabao Cup. It's simply the Premier League and the Champions League that they need to contend with. So for Reece James, I have to put question marks over his upcoming game time for this week. He's come off the back of a big injury, as I mentioned, and I can't necessarily foresee him playing Saturday against West Ham, playing Wednesday against Borussia Dortmund, and then playing 3 p.m. on Saturday against Southampton, a team that don't have a manager right now. I don't think that necessarily Potter needs to take that risk of Reece James. Now, I might be wrong, but personally, I think that resting him probably is the sensible play to manage his workload, knowing that a week later is their next game against Spurs. And that is going to then fall into a tricky time for Chelsea where they have Premier League game, Champions League game, back to the Premier League. So Reece James is the one that I definitely have question marks about. And Thiago Silva is another one as well. Now, we need to remember that Badiashile isn't in the Champions League squad. So they are automatically going to put him straight back into that Chelsea team. And similar to what Perisic, as I discussed, it's the age that we're worried about with Thiago Silva. I think there could be rotation in the centre-back partnership with Thiago Silva as well. He is superhuman, so he could play, but these two Chelsea players I would say are at risk. The one that I don't think is necessarily at risk as much is João Felix. I would anticipate João Felix to play at the age that he's at right now. He got banned for 3 games. He's raring to go. I would not anticipate Felix to be rotated in this Chelsea team. I think he's too important right now, and Chelsea need points on the board. So I think if you're looking in the market for João Felix, although they have got a tight turnaround, I think João Felix would be one of those players that would start for Chelsea. Now, last up, let's discuss the Man United assets, as this one is really interesting in regards to the Man United assets. Now, we need to remind ourselves that they did play against Barcelona only last night. Fantastic game where they drew 2-2, of course. So let's quickly highlight the fixtures that they have had. So previously on the Sunday, they played against Leeds, as we know, where they beat them 2-0. Then on the Thursday, so yesterday, they had their away fixture in Barcelona where Rashford, Shaw and Fernandes, 3 of the highly owned players in that Man United team, played 95 minutes each. And their Premier League game is going to be on the Sunday 2 p.m. kickoff where they play against a high-flying Leicester team. And unlike the Champions League fixtures where they have 19 days rest, 18 days rest, the Europa League is the following week. So they will then be playing Barcelona the following Thursday. So just kind of recap their fixtures. They had Leeds on the Sunday, they had Barcelona on the Thursday, they then got Leicester on the Sunday and Barcelona again on the Thursday. And that Barcelona game is really, really on a knife edge right now, being 2-2. So I don't necessarily think Ten Hag is going to be in a position where he can just field a weakened team against Barca. I feel like it would almost be better if they just lost 3-0 and he thought to himself, we're not going to win 4-0 in this fixture. Let's just put out some of the second string. He's got an amazing opportunity to knock out Barcelona in that Europa League. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he manages the squad and, importantly, those minutes of those big players. Now, Rashford feels like he's in too good form right now to be benched. And I would anticipate Rashford to start in that fixture because he's so important. And the same would be said for Bruno Fernandes as well. Luke Shaw is the question mark for me. We know Malacia can play at left back. They got Martinez, Varane, Harry Maguire, Lindelof to play centre back. So I think there's a really solid chance we could see game time managed for Luke Shaw. And I would not be surprised at all if we did see early substitutions for both Marcus Rashford and Bruno Fernandes in this fixture against Leicester. For that very reason, I think although we are deliberating about captaincy this week, I think that puts me off putting the captaincy on Marcus Rashford in game week 24, just with the knowledge that he played Thursday night against Barcelona for 95 minutes, and then is being tasked with playing 90 minutes 4 days later, or some would say 3 days later, in a sense, at the time they finish, against Leicester. And even if he was to play, I don't think we're going to be getting the best version of these players and Man United as a team. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. I'd be really interested to know in regards to where you're thinking about these assets here, whether you're considering selling any of them coming up. Now, what isn't on screen is both Man City and, of course, Liverpool, as they have their Champions League fixture next week. So just to remind you, obviously Man City play Wednesday night against Arsenal. They are then playing tomorrow at 3 p.m. against Nottingham Forest. And then they play on Wednesday against RB Leipzig away. So Man City are not going to be adverse from rotation either. I think there is going to be rotation in that Man City team. Do I think Haaland gets benched? I think his minutes, similar to Marcus Rashford, may get managed. So that is something to consider when you are looking at your teams. And in regards to Liverpool, they, of course, are away against Newcastle, a fixture that they can't really afford to drop or, rotate any of their team. Tomorrow, 5:30 p.m. Then they are at home against Real Madrid on the Tuesday, followed by Crystal Palace away on the Saturday. So they have got a very congested fixture and an incredibly tough Premier League game. So again, could there be minutes rotated in this Liverpool team at the back end of the Newcastle game with an eye on the Real Madrid game? Possibly. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. I think it was really interesting to discuss this situation right now with the players, as I really do think there is going to be a situation where there's going to be lots of rotation. And I would not be surprised this week if it is an absolute car crash of a game week. I think there's a lot of people right now sat there with Luke Shaw, for example, Bruno Fernandes, Rashford, De Bruyne, Haaland, Mitrovic, who is currently a fitness concern. I think there's going to be so much rotation this game week, or at least minutes managed. And that is going to be big problems for our FPL teams and panic all round. So let me have a look at the questions, guys, and then we'll move on to my current team reveal for game week 24. Just seeing the comments here. Alex is saying, is Robertson a good pick? Yes, I do think Robertson is a good pick. I'm always going to favour Trent Alexander-Arnold as the FPL option going forward, but if you can't afford Trent, I still think Robertson is a good option into your team. I do want to see how Liverpool are going to be integrated going forward with the introduction of Jota, Firmino, and also how they are kind of going about their play right now, because it seems like they are protecting themselves a little bit, going into a double pivot and allowing Trent to bomb on a bit more rather than playing an inverted right back role that we did see at the start of the season. So I can never pronounce the 18-year-old midfielder, so I'm not going to bother tarnishing his name, but he's coming to the team, given a bit of stability from a shape perspective, given a bit of legs in there. And what we have seen in transitions and in dominating possession, that they have opted for a double pivot, which has allowed that right flank and Trent to get forward, which is really promising from an FPL perspective. FPL Josh throwing in some jokes in here. Got a red card. Yeah, I don't mind that one. Chat Sports in, who's looking at Chelsea players, aka Felix? Absolutely. I think Felix is a fantastic option for our teams. As I discussed, I don't think he's going to get rotated much. He obviously had that huge ban off the back of that red card, so I think he's raring to go, and he's looked fantastic in the Chelsea shirt of the minutes that we have seen for him. Kane and Fernandes play every game. Yes, I absolutely agree on that one. Silva will get rested. Yep, I think that's a possibility as well. And Rashford will start. He scores most of United goals. Yes, I do agree with that one in regards to, I think Rashford is in a position right now where Ten Hag simply cannot take him out of the team. And as long as he is happy to play, I think he starts every other game. It is just worth noting that if we were to be in a unique position where Man United were 3 to the good against Leicester, and I don't anticipate that, we could see early minutes for Rashford because of that Barcelona game the following Thursday night. And what are your thoughts on KDB minutes? KDB is definitely a player that I'm worried about right now. But again, same could be said about Mo Salah going into game week 24. Now, Mo Salah, for example, just to reel off some of his minutes over the last few game weeks, he has played 89 minutes, 90, 90, 90, 90, 90, 90, 90, 90, basically 90 minutes every game. What's to say that he might not necessarily come off after the 70-minute mark against Newcastle to give some minutes into the legs of other players? I don't think it might not necessarily happen, but with Real Madrid in that Champions League game, Salah, a really important player in that team. So it is worth noting that you doing the KDB to Salah move maybe this week to protect minutes might not necessarily pay off in that fixture. And for me, away against Nottingham Forest, even though Kevin De Bruyne is a risk for minutes, I think I would much rather just play him, hope he plays, rather than bringing in Mo Salah, who plays against Newcastle away from home and also has the Real Madrid game coming up. So I think both are risks. And although I would anticipate Liverpool to do okay against Newcastle, quite controversial, I think Newcastle are in a little bit of a sticky patch right now. Liverpool starting to slowly show some signs of resurrection. I don't think it's worthwhile the transfer. And Lay's saying, my squad is looking pretty good. I'm not making any transfer this game, and that's absolutely fine. I agree. RS Creative Studio saying, I'm planning to bench Rashford, Trippier, and Shaw. Rest are dispensable. Yeah, is that for game week 25? I think that's absolutely fine. Sure, I can make an argument to sell as well if you need to accommodate some space. And Greenback Soccer saying, Enzo seems like a cheap option. I don't mind him. But just to reel off some stats here, again, apologies guys, you won't be able to see this on your screens, but I think it'd be beneficial just to give you an idea on how Enzo Fernandez has been doing from a stats perspective since he has been in the league. Again, take over a pinch of salt because he's played 2 full games, 180 minutes. And in those 180 minutes, he has had 3 shots, 0.09 XG and 0.53 expected assists. So, kind of what we expected. He isn't going to be the guy that's arriving in the box late, scoring goals. He is going to be, I could probably describe Enzo Fernandez as a Cesc Fabregas kind of player. Not the Barcelona Fabregas where he was making those late runs into the box and linking up with Lionel Messi, or the Arsenal Fabregas. We're talking about the Chelsea Fabregas here. So a player that dictates play from mid-pitch, but also links up from the edge of the box. So we're not talking about a Jorginho who interacts with the back four. We're talking about a player that is box to box, but very much connects all of the play. So I really think, as you probably remember, the assist that Fabregas done with Andre Schürrle, I believe against Fulham, one of those games where he dinked it into the back post. That assist that he had against João Felix was very reminiscent of that sort of style. And I think we're going to see a lot of that from Enzo Fernandez. Those 25-yard assists to the back post, those threaded balls. I don't think we're bringing in a player here that's going to be a goal threat, and it is worth noting that. So at 5 million, yes, I think he will tick over with the assists, but I don't think he's necessarily going to be a huge goal threat in this Chelsea team. Right, guys. Plenty of questions in the live chat, which is always great to see. And please do keep firing them in, as I will be answering them as we go through the live stream as always. But I just want to come on to my Game Week 24 team reveal. I'm going to quickly cover off what my current plans are and if I am planning on making any transfers for this game week. Okay, so here's how my team is currently looking going into Game Week 24. Now, just to give you a perspective, I have 1 free transfer and 0.3 million in the bank. Now, I have what you would call quite a template team, like a lot of managers out there. Kepa in between the sticks with his home fixture against Southampton. A back 3 of Ben White, Luke Shaw and Trippier. Midfield 4 of Saka, De Bruyne, Rashford and Fernandes. And a front 3 of Mitrovic, Haaland and Nketiah. And on the bench, Ward, Andreas Pereira, Doherty, who is now at Atletico Madrid, and Patterson, who has returned to training and is playing in an under-21s game this weekend. So he might be back for Game Week 25. Fingers crossed we get at least a few minutes out of him. So how I'm viewing my team right now, I think I'm in a really tough spot right now because I don't like how my team is looking. But I think everybody's in a position where their minutes are at risk this week. So for me, I have no benching headache, unlike a lot of you here, because my team is so dependent on that starting 11. So the back 3 picks itself. Yes, I could do a transfer this week, but I don't see any reason to do so with those defenders this week. The midfield 4 I'm more than happy with, but as I mentioned, Rashford and Fernandez's minutes are going to be at risk because of that Thursday game, second leg against Barcelona. But again, Rashford's so highly owned by a lot of teams, it really doesn't matter if he scores or doesn't start. Everybody's in the same boat. Fernandez is the one for me that needs to be that differential this game week, and try and just get a goal is going to be massive for the overall rank. And De Bruyne, again, as I discussed, is a rotation risk in my eyes. But do I sell him? The thing for me is I feel like there's so much more value rolling the free transfer and having 2 free transfers for Game Week 25. Because as you can see on my team, I'm in a tricky spot for Game Week 25. I don't have any intention of free hitting. So because of that reason, my current team for Game Week 25 would be Kepa in goal. I would then have Ben White and Patterson in defence, and that's it, because we need to remember Shaw has a blank game week, Trippier has a blank game week, and Doherty isn't in the country. Then in midfield, I would have Saka, De Bruyne and Andreas Pereira, and that's it, because Rashford and Fernandes blank. And I'd have a front three of Mitrovic, Haaland, and Nketiah. Thankfully, they have games. So my team will be a little bit barren, and I would like to bring in some Liverpool players. So because of that reason, I think rolling my free transfer gives me more flexibility. Now, looking ahead to game week 25, right now, the plan would be, and again, it's a very, very loose plan, would be to sell Bruno Fernandes because he has a blank game week and bring in Mo Salah. But because I don't have the money in the bank, I would then have to downgrade Kevin De Bruyne, who is away against Bournemouth, a very good fixture, it is worth noting, to a mid-price midfielder around 7.5 million or less. And then I would sell Luke Shaw or Matt Doherty for Trent Alexander-Arnold for a double game week. And then obviously I would field 10 players. I don't think I'd have enough for 11 unless Patterson plays that game week. That is my likely plan. That would be a -4 point hit. The one thing that is worth noting in regards to that plan is the mid-price midfielder is incredibly tough to pinpoint. And part of me thinks it would almost be better bringing in a blank player. And the reason being is, for example, in game week 25, yes, Brighton blank in game week 25, but then they have a great fixture in 26 and a double in game week 27. So while it doesn't make any sense to bring him in for a fixture that he doesn't have in 25, it prepares me later down the line. Otherwise, I could bring someone like Mahrez in and he doesn't even play in 25 because it's rotated. So a lot to think about going into game week 25, but the plan is not to free hit, as I think there will be plenty more value later on in the season with that free hit chip. And of course, Mitrovic currently flagged. There is a part of me that thinks, could I go sideways and sell him for João Felix of Chelsea? But once again, I don't have the money in the bank to do that. And I would then have to basically free up funds in order to initiate that transfer. As right now, Mitrovic is 6.9 million. It just isn't a move that is on the cards right now. And I think rolling the transfer and accepting that it is going to be a very difficult game week for a lot of players out there. And the captaincy would be on Haaland. We discussed about his minutes getting managed, and I could foresee a situation where he only plays 60 minutes. But injuries to Wilfred Boley and also McKenna means that Nottingham Forest are not going to be with their preferred centre-backs. And if you see any charts about Nottingham Forest, they concede so many chances through the middle of the pitch. If Haaland only gets 60 minutes, I think there's a potential for a haul against Nottingham Forest in that game. And I think going against Haaland with that potential could be detrimental to the overall rank. In particular, when Rashford is just as much of a rotation risk as Erling Haaland. And Saka could be a consideration, but I don't really feel it this game week. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. Let me come back to the live chat, answer some more questions, and then we will dip off into captaincy chat, predicted points, and the top 1k team before wrapping up this live stream. And let me just have a quick sip of the coffee while I read your questions. So Alex is saying, doesn't Robertson have more points over all seasons than Trent, though? And we've seen Trent rotated so much. Yep. Robertson basically always has an amazing second half of the season. But for me, with Trent, I've just always got a little bit of a soft spot for him. And I do think he will be the option to go for based on what we saw against Everton in that fixture. KDB is a differential. I'm worried about his game time. It is worth noting. But if he does play against Forest, he is an amazing differential. Chat Sport, thank you very much for the comment there. And Cheekster, thank you so much again, once again, for moderating the chat. It is massively appreciated. FPL Steeped Tea, I believe that is. Apologies if I got that wrong. Great content, mate. Definitely thinking about starting Perisic since Sessegnon is injured and Kilman is looking to be tempting as well. Yeah, I think Perisic is in a position right now where he kind of has to play because they don't have any other options. They really shot themselves on the foot with certain decisions with their transfer window. Kilman, very difficult one to bench this week, as it's one of those games where it's like, if I don't start him against Bournemouth, when do I ever start him? Because Bournemouth looks like an attractive fixture. But it is worth noting, I've been very impressed with Bournemouth's transfer window. They've picked up some very, very interesting players, some good attacking players. So I think they are going to be more of a threat than we think with Bournemouth. Praj is saying, with possible reducements for Haaland, Rashford, KDB, is Felix the armband an option? And I absolutely love that, Praj, if we want to go down the Felix route. The big thing about Chelsea, and the one thing I am worried about is, although we are creating some chances, we just can't put the ball in the net right now. This is the real problem. The only man that can is João Felix, so I understand the idea of putting the armband on him. Look, if you really fancy it, I absolutely understand that decision putting it on João Felix. I think it is a good decision if you're willing to go down that riskier route. And we have to remember that Chelsea don't have a fixture for a week after that game. So basically, once Chelsea have played that, they got a full week to rest, whereas the likes of Man United have to worry about Barcelona the following week, and Man City and Liverpool. So João Felix could be the ultimate differential. And if you are sat there in a position where your rank is not nice and you want to really make some big moves this week, then I like the João Felix pick. Just remember, as I always tell everybody who goes against Haaland, and I know it's boring FPL content, but unfortunately we're in a season right now where Haaland is just so highly owned that if you go against him and he does well, it's going to really hurt your FPL rank if the other option that you picked doesn't go big as well. It's just worth noting that. And Alex saying Bruno to Maddison. I like the move, Alex, but what I will say to you is it necessary this week? That's the only thing I would say. Is it necessary, or could you roll your free transfer? Do you think Bruno Fernandes at home against Leicester is better than Maddison away against Man United? If you do, then I like the move, because we know that in game week 25, Fernandes has a blank. But just think to yourself, is rolling the transfer better than doing that move? That's all. RS Creative Studio saying, plan to roll free transfer this game week, but need to change Botman and Almiron next game week. Any good pick with 0.8 million in the bank? Let me know in regards to who you mean, because you're on about selling Botman and Almiron. Any good pick with 0.8? Okay, so you're looking for both options. So if you're looking to buy in game week 25, then you're in a really tricky position, because I actually think some of the best midfield alternatives for you is going to be Alexis McAllister and Mitoma, but they don't have a fixture either in game week 25. So I would say to you first and foremost is, if you are looking to bring in a player for game week 25 and capitalise on the fixtures for game week 25, there isn't many options in that price point. Arsenal, there's no midfielder unless you can get to an Odegaard or a Saka that you don't have already a triple up. There's no Liverpool midfielder apart from Salah that is a consideration, and that's out of your price range. Everton, do you want McNeil? Probably not. And Wolves, do you want Neves? He might take over a goal, but realistically not the best option. So then we're coming back to single game weekers. And realistically, there isn't many that jump out the page that I think you need to bring into your teams this game week. So it comes back to it. Could Maddison, could Harvey Barnes, could Tete be these alternatives that we go for, and just completely disregard the fact that they don't have a single or a blank or a double, and just bring them in because they look good this game week? But I think we assess in game week 25 for your team and understand what direction you want to go in. For Botman, I think the obvious move would be Tarkowski for Everton. Get yourself the double in 25, and also he plays in game week 28 if you were to go for no chip strategy in game week 28. Ross saying, why can't I super chat you? Ross, main reason being is we try to answer all of the questions here. So absolutely, thank you very much for the thought of a super chat, but I don't think there's any need for it. We don't have it set up, and I always try to answer all of the questions either way. So Ross, get your question in here and I'll be sure to answer it before the end of this live stream. JP, is it worth it to sell Odegaard to Saka in game week 25? I think it feels a very luxury move. Because Saka's gone big in this double game week, we naturally feel we have to get Saka in. And while I do think he is the better option, I would say to you, is there other parts of your game that you need to realistically focus on before making that sideways move? I would argue there's going to be other problems in your team rather than that move there. And your team's almost the same as mine. 7 of them are in my starting 11. I have Kilman. Okay, that's a good team. And Great Michael saying, March or Mitoma? Now, really good question. We don't have a slide on this one. But somebody who has just popped up as an incredible option is going to be Alexis McAllister. Now, if you tuned in to my previous live stream last week or the week before, when did March score? March scored in game week 23. Hopefully you guys, I might have to crop it, because I basically discussed that although Mitoma was getting all the love, the underlying stats was still 50-50. Both March and Mitoma were posting the same numbers. And if anything, March had a higher expected goal involvement. So I was discussing how I feel like March at any minute is going to match Mitoma, if not outscore him in a game week. Now, this is my next prediction, guys. And again, it has been talked about in the community, so I can't take full credit for it. But I do think that Alexis McAllister is going to be a real option for our FPL teams. Now, he's 5.4 million. Now, when we compare that to the other Brighton options, he is 5.4 million. Mitoma is currently at 5.3 and Solly March is at 5.1. Now, why has nobody spoke about McAllister previously? Well, the reason being is because De Zerbi was operating with a system of a double pivot of Caicedo and McAllister, with him being a box-to-box now and then McAllister, and Lallana being in the number 10 position, roughly, or a number 8 is how you view it, being the creative force, and then they would play Mitoma off the left and Solly March off the right, with whoever up front, depending on the formation that they go for, even Ferguson or a double up front. Now, we've just got the news that Adam Lallana is going to be ruled out potentially for the rest of the season. And we saw after the World Cup that De Zerbi had an interview about how he felt like he needs to talk to McAllister about what his preferred position is. Now, against Crystal Palace in game week 23, we saw him deployed as a centre attacking mid. They brought Pascal Gross into the midfield alongside Caicedo, and McAllister played that Lallana role. Now remember, this is only one game week's worth of information, so we really cannot take much information off this. And I don't want you guys to come to any conclusions based on it. I want to see game week 24 and see if the same sort of underlying numbers start to be created. In that one game, McAllister had 7 shots, 3 on target, and an expected goals of 1.22 and an expected assist of 0.87. In contrast, March had 4 shots, an XG of 0.43, which is basically a third of McAllister's, but he did have an expected assist of 0.87. Mitoma, he had 1 shot, an XG of 0.08, and an expected assist of 0. So you can really see how all of these options are fantastic picks, depending on the week that you view them. 2 weeks ago, Mitoma was absolutely the route to go for. But if we were just looking at game week 23 in isolation, you would look at Mitoma and think, I'm never touching that FPL option. So it does change with these Brighton midfielders. But if McAllister does get deployed in this position over upcoming game weeks, I really, really think that he is a very interesting option. We need to remember, he is also on penalties as well, which again, we had this discussion about Saka versus Odegaard, and we said how penalties is the reason why I was going for Saka. Yes, you could say that there will only be a few penalties awarded a season, but you need to buy a ticket to get into the lottery. And the same applies to Bukayo Saka with Arsenal. We saw him get a penalty, and naturally he becomes a better FPL option because there is always the chance of a penalty, and we know he will take it. And that very thing happened against Man City. So McAllister needs to be on everybody's radar. I want to see game week 24, where Brighton have a really interesting fixture, as we know, at home against Fulham. I think that'll be a good game to identify whether McAllister is going to be an FPL option or not going forward. But you need to get him on your radar, as I really think he is a fantastic option over the coming game weeks outside of Mitoma or March. Right, I've got a few more slides to put on screen, guys, over the next 15 minutes. So let me get the top 1K team. We're going to quickly read this off. But just to conclude, my plan is to roll the free transfer unless we get any news that Mitrovic may be out. Then I may deliberate going sideways to João Felix with a -4. But realistically, it will just mean Andreas Pereira comes into the team as an automatic sub. And I will just accept that this is going to be a very difficult game week, as I think a lot of people aren't talking about it. And I think a lot of people are going to get hit with the fact that there's going to be a low scoring week because of expected minutes being awful for most players out there. Okay, top 1K team, here we go. So this is just a quick one, guys, just to show you, if you're sat there right now and wondering to yourself, what does that top 1K teams look like? This is exactly the template here. So this is based off the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm. We can generate a team based on the ownership of the most popular players in that top 1K in the world. And these are the players that consist of it. So, for example, 56% of the top 1K have Kepa as their goalkeeper. 87% have Luke Shaw, 42% have Ben White, and 99.2% have Trippier. So as I discussed, if you do plan on benching Trippier this week, just remember, he is massively owned by a lot of active managers, and I would expect him to be played by a lot of managers. Same goes for Rashford, 99.7% owned in the top 1K. If he scores, really doesn't matter because we all own him. If he doesn't play, it doesn't matter. It's kind of one of those things, unfortunately, Rashford. And the exact same thing applies for Haaland. He's 100% owned. And honestly, when a player reaches this sort of level, literally it's a 10-player game. Whatever Haaland does, it makes no difference to you whatsoever. If he plays, doesn't matter. If he misses, doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter because everybody's getting the exact same points from Haaland and most likely those captaincy points as well. Now, what I really do like here, based on the top 1K, if you're trying to break into it, there are a few differentials out there that are going to be popping up. De Bruyne at 42%, he could be a fantastic option into your teams if he does play this week, and Nketiah as well. I was an Nketiah owner in Game Week 23, and it was very frustrating. I feel like it went under the radar a little bit. We just need to get the stats up here for Nketiah because those 2 missed headers, I was shouting at the TV. He had 5 shots and an expected goals of 0.65 against Man City. Unbelievable opportunities. He absolutely fluffed his line with those headers, and I really did think he was going to get on the score sheet, but nonetheless, he could not score with those chances. So I'll leave this on screen, guys, just to give you an idea on what the top 1K currently looks like based on ownership. So you just got an idea on maybe the players that might get played this week. Now, Ross is asking, I have Kepa, Ward, Shaw, Trippier, Kanji, White, Bueno, Rashford, KDB, Odegaard, Matoma, Andreas, Haaland, Kane, and Nketiah. 1.1 million in the bank, 1 free transfer. What could I do with this team? I'm thinking wildcard 27, free hit 28, bench boost 29. Thoughts? Okay, so first and foremost, I like the team. Good squad depth there. It's a solid team. And the strategy that you're talking about is a very popular strategy. Now, again, the reason why I'm not getting too stressed about the trip strategy is because we really don't know what is going to happen until after Game Week 25. So the way I'm viewing it right now, and this may help you, and I will then come back to your question, is what I'm going to do with my chip strategy is I'm simply going to bring in the Liverpool players that I want for Game Week 25 because they double. I know a lot of people might be laughing at the back there thinking, why are you buying Liverpool players? We'll see against Newcastle whether they are still viable options. But if they put in a performance against Newcastle, I think a lot of the FPL community are going to move towards Liverpool assets. Now, we got some worries about Liverpool. They might blank in Game Week 28, which is going to cause problems later down the line. But I think what we have to do right now is just play with what's in front of us. And we know that in Game Week 25, there is a blank. So we need to capitalise on the teams that have that double. And that is going to be Liverpool assets. Now, after Game Week 25, we will get an understanding who blanks in 28 and who doubles in 29. And that is how our chip strategy will start to play out. Now, for your team, you're obviously in a position right now where you don't have any Brentford players. You're obviously in a spot where you have a Brighton asset, which is great news, obviously, for their double in Game Week 27. So I like the thought process right now of wildcard in 27, free hit in 28, bench boost in 29. The one thing I will say to you is don't sweat too much about it right now. I think rolling your free transfer in your position is good. You can start your team with Kepa in goal. You could then go for any one of those back three. You could go for Shaw, Trippier and Akanji if you want to. You could put White into that 11, absolutely. Your team's looking really solid, but I would recommend playing the front three of Haaland, Kane and Nketiah. So Ross, I think rolling your free transfer this week, go into Game Week 25, plan on bringing in a Liverpool asset, most preferably selling KDB to Mo Salah, and then maybe even look to bring in another option to your team. The one thing I would say to you is this, because you plan on wildcarding in Game Week 27, I would not be looking to bring in any players from Brighton or Brentford into your side because you're going to be wildcarding them in 27. So you need to focus on Game Weeks 24, 25 and 26. Now, I discussed about it in regards to why you should roll your transfer this week. But in your situation, if you wanted to, if you were a Mitrovic owner and you're not, but this goes out to some people that may be listening, if you are fully set on a wildcard Game Week 27 wildcard, then I think maybe using your transfer this week is a good use of your move. You could bring in João Felix for the next 3 fixtures knowing that he plays, capitalise on the home game at Southampton knowing that you're then going to sell these players in Game Week 27. But to kind of conclude, I think rolling your transfer is a good move for your team. Then you can really pile in for the next 2 game weeks. But your chip strategy may change off the back of Game Week 25's cup results, where we may see a different fixture landscape if there are any upsets. So don't sweat too much about the chip strategy, and I would roll in your situation. I think your team is fantastic this week. Keep Botman or transfer Tarkowski Kilman or another option. I like it for your move. And I think if you're bringing in Kilman, you've got to do it this week because they're home game against Bournemouth. Is it desperate this week? I don't think it's desperate this week. I would say to you, what's the rest of your team look like? Do you need to roll because the other options that you need to rotate? If it's simply a Newcastle player that you're even going to sell this week or next, then I'd probably pull the trigger this week. How to find out a team's predicted points, what tool is it? That is going to be on Fantasy Football Fixes. You can check it out. The link is in the bio. Sign yourself up for a 7-day free trial. Get access to all of the tools available there. Thoughts on Badiashile? I like him. I think he will get majority game time in the league, but it is worth noting Wesley Fofana, it has returned. He was back in the squad. I do think there will be rotation in that Chelsea backline, but Badiashile I think will get plenty of Premier League time because he is not operating in the Champions League. One thing I will say, if they lose against Dortmund, Chelsea literally just have the Premier League to play in, so they may look to just play their best too. And what's to say that once Wesley Fofana is playing, that it isn't Fofana and Thiago Silva together. Ronaldo in the chat, hey mate, why not captaining Rashford at our home fixture? We covered this earlier, buddy. I think the reason why is because of his minutes, and I see Cheeks has covered it off in the chat, so thank you very much, Cheekster. The minutes against Barcelona is the only worry. Playing on Thursday night, 95 minutes. He then is going to definitely start against Barcelona the following Thursday, so we might get a situation where he might just think to himself, you know what, I am literally just going to give him 70 minutes and that is it. That could be enough for you, but I'm just a little bit worried about Rashford's minutes, that's all. And is Grealish or Bernardo a better option? No, I wouldn't be looking for either of those players because Grealish went off injured against Arsenal and Bernardo Silva's minutes are very difficult to pinpoint right now. Just covering off any more questions. Ross saying, really appreciate you, Nacho, and what the whole of the Fixed crew do for us fans. For that, Ross, really appreciate the comment, buddy. Thank you very much. Mudryk, no, not an option right now. I would not be considering. I think there'll be plenty of rotation with Raheem Sterling returning. And also, Mason Mount isn't completely been banished as shadows. He will get game time as well. Would Gomez be an option for Liverpool in Game Week 25? Benny Blanco was asking. No, I do not think so because Van Dijk was on the bench in Game Week 23. And I anticipate a Van Dijk-Matip combo in defence over that double game week. I don't think Gomez will get the majority game time there. And Cheeks again, smashing it with the comments, and I really do appreciate it. And Peter saying, I prefer using my chips after game week 30. Is there a way to go through the double game week of blanks without using the chips? What players would be best to use? I'm rolling my transfer and don't mind a -4. Yeah, so Peter, this is a position that I think a lot of managers are in. I think a popular move right now is going to be free hitting in game week 29, as we do anticipate that to be a massive double game week. Then you wildcard in game week 33 to prepare for the massive game week 34 double where you will bench boost. That is going to be a very popular strategy. Now you could wait until after game week 30 to also play your free hit, maybe in game week 37 where we know there will be another big double game week in that week. So if you were set on playing your free hit after game week 30, then I think Everton are a good option because, as I discussed, you need to focus on game week 25, game week 27, and game week 28, as there is a blank in game week 28. And as I discussed, Everton assets play in the blank game week 28 no matter what. As I said, game week 28 hasn't been announced yet because we're waiting off the back of the cup fixtures that are after game week 25. Chelsea are going to have no blank or double over this period. So if you want to bring in a Chelsea player, you could bring João Felix for the long term. He could be a good option for you to negotiate these game weeks. And the same applies for Fulham. If the FA Cup results go their way, they will also play in game week 28. So the one thing I will say to you is this. Very difficult for me to suggest any players right now because it's all dependent on game week 25, that period between game week 25 and 26 where the cup games are played, because that would then dictate the teams that are playing in 28 and 29. But we know for sure Everton are a team to target if you want to go down that route. Now, guys, I've been going over the time that we're meant to be doing on the stream here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw on the predicted points for game week 24, as I do think this is very, very popular for you guys. And it just helps you out if you are looking to bring in a transfer or consider a captaincy. I think this does help you out. So this is the predicted points based on the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm. So check it out, guys. I won't reel through it too much because, again, it's just, I'm going to be reading off what basically you can read on the screen here. But just to summarise, Haaland is the highest projected points at 6, but it's worth noting Harry Kane is at 5.9, and I would argue that his expected minutes are a lot better than Erling Haaland. So maybe a differential captain on Kane potentially, but I think it's going to take a brave man to go against Erling Haaland. Some differentials that it's worth noting have good projected points. Tony becoming a bit of a differential right now. Also, Son, I don't think anyone sat there with Son. He's looking to do well at 5.3 projected points. Also, we discussed Perisic, 4.7 projected points, and we do anticipate him to play for Spurs in this game week. But again, I'll leave that on the screen, guys, so you can check it out. See if you if there's any of these players that do appeal to you. Again, I'm kind of just reeling it off, but a reminder, this is from the Fantasy Football Fix projected points based on our algorithm. Do check it out on the site. Links are in the bio. Make sure you do check it out. SL saying, need to target Chelsea, Everton, Villa teams that don't blank if you want to save chips. Yeah, really good suggestion there in regards to the teams that we need to target. Adam Moss, hope you're doing well, mate. Hi, FPL Nacho. To avoid burning the transfer, would you go sideways, Martinelli to Saka or Ake to Tarkowski for the double? Okay, so Adam's a really good question there in regards to that, because you're in a situation right now where Ake's minutes are now at risk. I was thinking this a few game weeks ago about how Laporte and Diaz just simply can't sit on the sidelines for the time that they have been, because they are top defenders. It isn't like we're looking at a B team centre-backs here. We're looking at 4 or 5 fantastic centre-backs. So for you, I think both players are big risks going forward into this double game week for their game time. Obviously, Ake, the one that doesn't have the double, but I would argue that Martinelli might as well have a single game week in that double in 25, as Trossard minutes are going to be increasing each and every game week that Martinelli isn't delivering. And I didn't think Martinelli had a good game against Man City, is worth noting as well. So previously, I thought Martinelli was unlucky. I thought that he wasn't going to get dropped because his underlying stats were still fantastic. Didn't see too much from the eye test for Martinelli against Man City. And I do think Trossard is going to get game time in the foreseeable future. So I personally would probably chase the upside, and I would get myself to Saka as soon as possible. I understand that probably right now as well, Ake is a problem in your team. But I think getting the Martinelli Saka move done is probably a priority. And then we can address the Ake situation later down the line if there was to be further rotation in the Man City team. But right now, Martinelli Saka feels sideways, but I do think it will pay off over the foreseeable future. Jerome saying, rolling my transfer this week. Yes, I absolutely agree on that move there. Is Foden an option? No, don't go there. It will be painful for you as an owner. Gary Jones saying, play 3 of White, Shaw, Trippier and Akanji, or bench Martinelli. Gary, incredibly tough here with your situation, because I empathise with the Martinelli situation. I feel like if you have Martinelli, I do think you have to play him, unfortunately. It is in a position where if you do bench him and he does well, you're really going to kick yourself. So I probably would be in a situation where if I had to play him, it probably would be a combination of, very difficult to say, White, Shaw and Trippier. Akanji's minutes I really can't predict right now. If you were at the position where you thought to yourself, I really don't think Akanji will necessarily play, then go for the 3. If you think Akanji will play, I probably would bench of those 3. Maybe Luke Shaw because of the Barcelona fixture that they do have later down the line. Okay, guys, I think what we're going to do there is wrap up this live stream. Thank you so much for tuning into this live stream. It's been a really popular one for a Friday night that I would argue is quite a slow burner of a game week, because I know a lot of managers out there are rolling their free transfers. So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I really hope it has provided some value with this live stream. I think we've gotten through all the slides, so a massive shout out to Finn in the background for doing all these. Always smashes it every week, and I don't want that to go unnoticed there. As always, guys, if you can get us to 50 likes, it'd be massively appreciated. We always do try to hit 50 likes each and every live stream. If you can do that on your way out, I will be greatly thankful to you. So, Cheekster, once again, buddy, thank you so much for moderating the chat. Smashed it once again, and it's awesome to see you in the chat each and every live stream. It doesn't go unnoticed for that one. And Gary, thank you so much, buddy. I hope you have a good game week. So, guys, have a fantastic game week. I'm sorry to say, I do think it is going to be a tough game week because of the expected minutes with the players coming up, but hopefully we can get some green arrows there. And just to confirm that I will likely be rolling my transfer with captaincy on Erling Haaland. So Have a great one, guys. I will see you in the next video. It will be next week, looking at the top transfers for double game week 25, which I think is going to be a really, really important one. So if you're not already, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, as that is going to be a juicy game week where I think there's going to be a lot of popularity going forward. And make sure you subscribe to the channel as well, and check out all the links in the bio for the Fantasy Football Fix site, as this is where we take all the information from. Take care, guys. Have a great one, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.